Fire Emblem Engage, with all the updates and DLC, has been released in its entirety. There are 54 maps in total, and I want to experience it all in one uninterrupted endeavor, which thus spurred on the Maddening Total Ironman. Playing on the hardest difficulty, I must complete all chapters without reloading saves or using the Draconic Time Crystal. All decisions are final, character deaths are permanent, and a game over is a failed run. Kinda like what happened with the first Aleer. She may have gotten crit by the boss in Chapter 4, but that's okay, because this was always a job for Aleer 2. Across 8 streams, tearing through the main story, eating books because my army can't cook, losing Vander and Jade due to their severe allergies to electrocution, finishing all the base game and DLC bracelet paralogues, and a little bit of fishing. Okay, a lot of fishing. Fine, most of the streams were just fishing. Look, I needed bond fragments. We arrived just before the endgame. It may have been a smooth ride to get here, but it was all just build-up and preparation for the most daunting obstacle yet. Maddening Fell Xenologue. This 6-chapter side story changes your units to have preset stats, classes, and inventories, meaning I cannot rely on being over-leveled, nor can I use my forged weapons as I could in the main story. In addition to tripling my game over conditions, Fell Xenologue does not pull its punches. With 26 main story chapters and 21 paralogues under my belt, the only barrier between myself and the endgame are the 6 chapters that lie at the bottom of this well. After taking the plunge, Aleer 2 is greeted by Fell Dragon twins Nell and Nil in Lethos Castle. They tell her that the Divine Dragon and Sombrond of their world slew each other in battle. Even with Sombrond gone, an unknown enemy remains, and schemes to fulfill his ambition of gathering the 7 Emblem bracelets to bring about ruin. Recognizing they lack the manpower and resources to stand against such a threat, Nell and Nil perform the ancient rite of starting a GoFundMe page for $30, in hopes their prayers will be answered by a savior willing to pay for the DLC expansion pass. Unfortunately, the GoFundMe page catches the attention of the mysterious malefactor, and they send a pack of assassins to snuff us out and purloin Crom's bracelet. Besides Aleer 2 and the Fell twins, I only have room to deploy 2 other units, but that's more than enough to trivialize the map. By giving Nell Soren's bracelet, she gains access to the skill assigned Decoy, or, as I like to call it, cheating. By making Louis the decoy, the wolves are forced to attack him, overriding the typical Maddening AI that would have enemies ignore targeting units they do no damage to. Courtesy of obtaining a steel great lance from Tamara's inventory and having the skills to bolster his damage and hit rate, Louis is capable of consistently one-shotting the corrupted wolves. With Marin on mage control, nothing can stand in Louis' way. Not even the boss. Can't even scratch him without losing an entire health bar first. If only didn't have 0 base strength. Then maybe he'd make me feel a shred of concern. With Tiki's bracelet reclaimed, it's time to head off and collect the bracelets from the other countries. Though that battle really worked up an appetite, huh? In Fell Xenologue 2, we arrive in Firene and rendezvous with Celestia of the 4 Winds, the counterpart to Zephia of the 4 Hounds. The world of Fell Xenologue hosts alternate versions of the characters we're familiar with in the main story, hence Celestia's exceedingly kind and motherly demeanor. She informs us of the status of Hector's bracelet, which is in the possession of King Alfred, who leads his ill-tempered, war-mongering nation, and Celine, who is pretty much the same. Honestly, the only difference is that she speaks her mind. The Firenese do not take kindly to being approached by the Fell Dragons, let alone being told to give up their bracelet, so they spring into combat with the intent to make petals fall. Alfred and Celine are a moat and field away from us, and the enemies are in small, isolated clusters, making this map a lot less hectic than the last. Celestia is by far the best guest unit in Fell Xenologue, by virtue of her high stats and flight. The battle will be carried by the 4 units I brought along. Louis, a straightforward pick who proved himself in the last map, Seadoll, a dancer, Ivy, a second magic flyer but can also use stabs and has canter, and Godleen, the star of the show. Though her preset stats in Fell Xenologue aren't impressive, her skills more than patch them up. Sword Power 5 grants plus 10 might to her 11 sword attacks, and Speed Taker will overcome the weapon weight penalty, allow her to double most enemies once fully charged. After cleansing myself of all the enemies to the left of the moat, I coerce Alfred to attack Ivy, who was unintentionally the perfect Alfred Slayer. Veronica's Reprisal Plus gives her enough damage to delete a full health bar, and Hildskulf erases the last 2 health bars in total safety since it prevents counterattacks. The map doesn't end until both royals fall, so the Salines get into an L-Thunder war, with my Saline engaged with Crom to get plus 10 magic and a Robin Chan attack, and the other Saline having stupid ignore damage effects from the enchanters. Once Saline beats Saline, we get Hector back and amicably take Alfred and Saline's leave. But Nell soon gets into an argument with Alir 2 because she's a bit hangry. I sure do hope Nell can grab a bite or two before we leave Firene. In Fell Xenologue 3, we enter the peaceful nation of Brodia and get introduced to Gregory, Griss's counterpart, who lacks tattoos and piercings because he hates feeling pain. Unfortunately, he was pursued by the Brodian royals Chadchrist and Virginmont, who are the exact opposites of the Allchrist Diamant we know and have had their testosterone levels redistributed. In order to keep Brodia's peace and their bracelet, they pick a fight to eradicate us invaders. We begin with our backs against the wall and must claw our way to stability. Aggressive flyers and 10 ranged mage cannoneers cover a wide area, making it difficult to keep my Nell and Nils safe. Despite also being a game over condition, Alir 2 is a pretty competent fighter thanks to engaging with Roy, giving her extra stats, the 1-2 range Binding Blade powered up by Sword Power 5, and even Blazing Lion to punish any enemies who dare go into right triangle formation. The map is filled with area-based flyer reinforcements, with each group appearing 6 at a time. The Eastern Griffin Knights can be dealt with by Louis after he gets assigned as the decoy, and a charged up Saline can dispose of the Wyvern Knights, though I must mind her defenses, or rather lack thereof. Once the skies are clear, Ivy is free to take down the mage cannoneers atop the watchtowers to make the starting area safe for the final part of the map. By using a summoned unit from Veronica, I can make Allchrist aggressive, which triggers the Brodian Royals to push forward and the final batch of flyer reinforcements to appear from the south. By being in position to handle the flyers immediately, Brodia's pincer attack is thwarted, and all I need to do is twiddle my thumbs until Allchrist and Diamant approach my team, and have Alir 2 incinerate them with massive bonus damage from Sword Power 5 and Reprisal Plus. Before leaving with the rest of the group alongside Veronica's bracelet, Nell follows her nose and secretly infiltrates Brodia Castle, feeling a bit peckish after such a grueling battle. Allchrist and Diamant were both toasted to perfection by the Binding Blade, so she succumbs to her hunger and eats them, just as she did off-screen with Alfred and Saline back in Firene, but she has yet to satiate her appetite. In Fell Xenologue 4, we travel to Elusia and meet the remaining 2 members of the Four Winds. Madeline, Marnie's counterpart, who is mature, knightly, and despises praise, and Mavir. What? That's just Mavir. He could have just edited his mouth, thrown some colors, and boom, here's Maurice. The people would have loved him. Anyway, Mavir informs us that Queen Tamara of Solm has invaded and is currently battling Queen Ivy. Nell cannot resist this 2-for-1 combo meal, so she leads us into the middle of the fray. Queen Ivy starts in an awkward position, so I opt to advance towards Queen Tamara. While the Elusian and Solmic armies squabble in the north, I make my way to the bottom right, using a variety of Dragon Veins to reduce enemy movement, and blast through their ranks with area of effect engage attacks. In the meantime, Elusia has been left unchecked, allowing Ivy to spawn in a bunch of corrupted wyverns before she charges towards us. Tantamount to her own country's performance, Tamara is a joke and easy to take out, even lacking the Veteran Plus skill that every other boss has. As for handling the other queen, I use my own Ivy to bait Ivy in front, and use a 4-star female warrior to clutch the victory. Now that the matriarchs are subdued, Nell takes the opportunity to transform and eat the queenly meal. However, in her gluttony, Nell accidentally eats Ivy's mount, which upsets her stomach so much that she needs to run away to puke. The Four Winds rush to her aid, leaving Nil and Alir 2 behind. Okay, I guess we're still lingering here. Hey, where'd the music go? Why is Nil talking like that? How'd Tiki get here? What's that weapon in your hand? In Fell Xenologue 5, Nell returns from losing her lunch, but Alir 2 is nowhere to be found. Nil shows up and tells us that Alir 2 went to the supermarket in Solm to buy Nell some Tums, but she forgot to take her wallet with her, so the gang makes haste to the store. Once they arrive, they only find themselves in a trap, surrounded by the corrupted. In that moment, Nil belts out a malevolent cackle and reveals that he is not the Nil we thought him to be, but E-Nil, the unknown mastermind we've been fighting against this entire time. He laid this trap to kill Nell in the winds, so he can run to where he captured Alir 2 and execute her himself. The four winds stay back and clear a path for Nell to rush ahead and put a stop to Nil. This map puts Nell in a cage match against Nil, Alir 2 in an actual cage in which she cannot act or move, and the rest of my units outside, who must infiltrate the temple and save the dragons before either dies and causes a game over. Nell has no chance of winning against Nil, and will die after enough repeated assaults. However, by giving Nell Corrin's ring, she can force Nil to move by Alir 2's cage and trap him between ice pillars. Despite it being possible for Nil to escape his icy prison, he and the Martial Master are not smart enough to cooperate and bust him out, so he'll be confined here for the remainder of the map. With Nell's safety secured, I can turn my attention to Alir 2, who can evade Mage Cannoneer shots easily enough with the Void plus 30. However, the real threat to her comes from the eternally respawning Corrupted Wyvern reinforcements. Not only are they capable of two-shotting Alir 2, but the Wyverns spawn in a completely enclosed section of the map. While I could just constantly heal Alir 2, I had decided on an alternate, safer solution that is only possible thanks to Etier. By giving her Celica's ring, Etier can warp Ragnarok into the room with the Wyvern before it gets shot down with an Astrostorm from Marin. When the subsequent Corrupted Wyvern reinforcements appear every other turn, Etier's base strength plus keen insight can kill them immediately before they can get a single attack off. Between Nell freezing Nil in place and Etier keeping the heat off of Alir 2, the rest of my army can move at their own pace, without having to stress or rush to save either of the dragons. Eventually, the main army gets close enough for Fagado to start summoning Wyvern and Mage Knights, but Godleen, with plus 10 speed and plus 20 might from skills, can erase them with ease. With a dancing contract, Chloe shoots Fagado with Fail Not 3 times, so Louis can clean up Fagado's final health bar with a Steel Great Lance. Hortensia attempts to avenge her comrade, but Celine gathers her retainers for a tea-time team-up and disposes of her. Disregarding the extra steps needed to kill the stupid enchanter, the main army can finally reinforce Nell, power of friendshipping all over Nil, and capping the chapter off with a thoroughly unimpressive Giga Levin sword. Meanwhile, the four winds are still stuck inside the supermarket and are getting overwhelmed. Instead of dying in vain, Mavir comes up with a plan for each of the winds to break the structural pillars and collapse the roof, killing everything inside and simultaneously making a corrupted sandwich for Nell in case she gets hungry later. By the time Alir 2 and Nell reach the supermarket parking lot, the building has already crumbled. Before we have time to wallow in despair, Nil is back and abducts Nell with warp magic because of fucking course he can just do that. He tells Alir 2 to meet him at the Fallen Somnio for the final confrontation, as opposed to just warping her there as well, because of fucking course he can't just do that. In the final chapter of Fell Xenologue, Alir 2 arrives at Nil's invitation, and he orders her to unlock the seal on the final bracelet in exchange for Nell's life. With the power of all the Emblem bracelets, he transforms into a great fell dragon and prepares to kill us all. But he is interrupted by the surprise arrival of the winds, though Mavir is conspicuously absent. The remaining winds recount their final moments. Before the roof flattened them, Mavir swooped in with a warp staff and warped Celestia, Gregory, and Madeline outside to safety. He could have used a rewarp staff to escape himself, but since Nell gave an order for them all to live, and this is the Fell Xenologue version of Mavir, he acts contrary to the obedient Mavir we know, and thus dies in an act of rebellion. Now that story time is over, Nil reminds us of his presence and intent to kill us all, so Alir 2 rallies the three winds and Nell to take him down. The map begins with a notification, reminding you that units that die in Fell Xenologue will return after the battle concludes, which is a terrifying omen as for what's to follow. Fell Nil is a force to be reckoned with, capable of a giant beam attack that ignores defenses and a literal instant-kill move that destroys the ground and any living beings in his range. He starts next to your army with a single revival stone, but has an effect that reduces all damage by 50 until he destroys and leaves all the sigils. Even so, I have spent the entire game preparing for this map, and will attempt to win in a single turn. Leer 2 with Emblem Roy will be my ticket to actually fighting Fell Nil, but she first needs to lose all her HP and survive with holdout +++. The next step involves lowering Fell Nil's stats. Une, who has inherited Soren's anima focus, uses Celica's Warp Ragnarok to activate the fire debuff, and Marin uses Korn's Torrential Roar to proc Draconic Hex, which combined inflicts Fell Nil with -7 defense and -4 to his other stats. Now I must buff Leer 2. Veil with Alphonse's Bond Ring bestows +6 damage thanks to Fell Protection, Rally Spectrum, and Spur Attack. And Nell, engaged with Emblem Veronica, grants +2 strength and another action thanks to the Dragon-type contract. Leer 2 engages with Roy for more stats and HP and can attack with a buffed Libération, which deals +15 damage to Fell Nil. Sword Power 5 and Reprisal Plus adds to her damage output, and we can nearly bring him to half health. Seedall dances to give her another action, and canters to the space above, and Chloe slightly heals Leer 2, so holdout +++ can activate again. Unfortunately, Special Dance makes her too fast, to the point where Fell Nil no longer has a 100% hit rate, so I have Etier with Camilla use Vein of Smoke to purposely lower my own avoidance. This is important because if Nil misses, Leer 2 will not receive the full damage bonus from Reprisal Plus. I need to use a Goddess Dance, but Nell is not positioned to be affected, so I use Reposition with Hortensia and Ike, and swap with Madeline and Sigurd. Tamara's Goddess Dance does not only refresh the actions to adjacent units, but also grants +4 strength by virtue of her being a backup unit. Additionally, I inherited Quality Time on her to heal Leer 2 to take another hit. Leer 2 uses her first action to reveal Fell Nil's final health bar, then gets contracted by Nell to bring him to under half health. Hortensia repositions Nell out of the way so Seedall can dance and heal with Quality Time, which lets Leer 2 go for the killing blow. This method is 100% consistent and replicable, but of course requires an investment of 11,000 SP on Leer 2 to get Sword Power 5 and Reprisal Plus, made possible through SP books and SP conversion. Fell Nil has fallen, and Nell commits a Rayoma by stabbing herself, meaning we have achieved glorious victory over Fell Xenologue. All that's left is to go back to the main story and beat the endgame. Since I have literally cleared all other maps before this point, this chapter is a victory lap. That's so easy that I definitely did not put Leer 2 in range of 6 enemies, and only happened to survive because of an HP tonic and meal from Fran that boosted Leer 2's defense and resistance. After totally not almost throwing away the entire run and being punished for my hubris, I finally vanquished Sombron, the generic 3-star sword flyer, bringing the Ironman to a close. This entire adventure was streamed on this channel, and you can find the VODs to see how it all went down. Go ahead and zap that subscribe button like you're electrocuting Vander and Jade, and I will see you in the next one.
You can